Hi guys, Tracy here with another process, and Lila is joining me for at least some of today. I was inspired by this Distress Oxide and water splashes that I was using for another project, actually for a scrapbooking page that I was doing, and it made me want to make a splashy watercolory kind of a background for a card. One of the things I'm trying to do is use more of my supplies. And that is a kind of thing that I'm challenging myself to ever since I moved rooms from the basement to the main floor of my house. It really struck me how many things I actually have. And this stamp set from Mama Elephant is actually these two stamp sets that come with dies as well, are two supplies that I actually won in February at a crop that I went to, but I haven't had a chance to actually use them yet. So I thought that's a darn shame because these are really cute stamp sets. So I decided to take them out and use them today. Now, I'm not sure what I'm doing there. Every time I reach up, it's because I'm accessing my computer, so I'm not sure what I was looking for. But that's my Misty tool, which is a stamp positioning platform. And I have, I think it's watercolor paper that I'm using. Let me go and check. Actually, it's not watercolor paper. I don't know what kind of paper it is. It's just some plain white cardstock. When I moved my room, I discovered a whole stack of white cardstock for which the brand is just a mystery to me. And so I'm using that. I'm not sure how it's going to work with either Copics or whatever I plan to color this with. At this point, I didn't quite know. So one of the benefits of using a Misty tool or any type of stamp positioning platform is that you can double stamp. So if the stamp isn't quite as vivid as you need it to be, you can just restamp it as you saw me do. I'm using archival ink because at this point, I think I'm going to be using either distress ink with water or some type of watercoloring type of technique. And because I'm thinking I'll be using water, I'm using archival ink because it is waterproof. And it's not going to smear and run and move around on my page when I add some inks to it. And so my cat is being very persistent. I'm asking her to please step aside. It would be nice if she would just curl up and sleep beside me like my other cat used to, but no, this one will not do that. So I've changed my mind and decided to use Copics. I actually did try to watercolor, and I can't remember what it was that I was using, but it was just kind of like the spaces are too small for the size brushes I have, and so I decided to use my Copics instead. I don't use my Copics very often, and this is all the more reason to use them in my mind. And so as you can see, I'm using BOO here and just kind of coloring in the whole horse or the whole unicorn, and then I'm going back with this other color. I don't remember what it is because I moved the cap. And then I'm just kind of spreading that out and blending it a little bit. And I don't really know how to do Copic coloring. I've watched some videos, and I mean, I know how, but I don't always do it the right way. Sometimes I go from light to dark, and sometimes I go from dark to light. As you can see, these two colors aren't very different from one another, and it doesn't result in a really terribly shaded looking unicorn, but I like him. I just wanted to get color on him. It didn't matter to me if he was terribly shaded or realistic looking or anything like that. So I just added a very, very faint color of B. I think it's B-O-O-O, maybe B with 4 O's after it. And now I'm just adding another blue here, or actually that's a gray, sorry. It looks like it's C5 that I'm using here for the hooves. And what I wish I had done, what I had planned to do, was all tone on tone. And I like how this one looks. So I'm making the wings be pink, but I'm going to make this one basically be a blue unicorn with darker blue hair. And I really like how that looks. So here's the pink on the wings. And I don't have very many Copic colors, and if I make more of these videos, I'll try to do a better job of recording what colors I used. Part of the problem is that I had the markers out and I was going to narrate it right away, and so I left the markers out, but then I put them away because I didn't narrate it. It's actually been over a week since I made this card. So if I do more Copic coloring cards, I do have another one that's uploading now that also has the same problem of not recording the colors, I will try to remember from this point forward. So anyhow, I'm having fun, and basically I'm just using the colors that I have. I don't have a huge selection of colors, as you can see from my little color chart there. And so for that reason, I just have to use what I have, and I encourage you to use what you have too. And so therefore, it's not really necessary to use the same colors that I used. In fact, I don't really like the colors that I used, especially for the second unicorn. I like this one, but the second one is kind of a little, I don't know, mismatched or kind of awkward looking, or I don't know. So I'm just going over the wings with my Wink of Stella marker, which just adds a really subtle shimmery look. And I had gone outside of the lines there, so I just used my colorless blender to push the ink back into his snout there. And now I'm just I'm picking the colors as I go, which is not really the best way to do this. What I really need to do from this point forward is pick out a color scheme and then pick markers to go with the color scheme instead of just kind of coloring as I go like this. I think that's how I end up with a unicorn that I really don't like on this second card here. But so anyhow, the rainbow is pretty straightforward. I only have so many colors in terms of the primary colors. So I started with red, and then for some reason I moved on to do a balloon. And this marker is like this, so it tends to blob and too much ink comes out, and a way to fix that is to just take off both of the ends at the same time, and then the pressure inside the chamber will equalize somehow. And I don't really understand the physics behind it, but that's how it works. But I didn't do that until it was too late. So you can see how that red marker just blended into it just oozed out and bleeded into the other balloons. And so I'm not going to be using that set of balloons. I'll use this other one instead. And my apologies that this coloring is happening off screen. So I just moved a little bit forward in the process so that you can see more of what I'm doing. And so basically I am coloring random parts of all of these images. I'm just doing the rainbow, and then as I go through the colors of the rainbow, if there's anything else that I need to add anywhere else on the page, I just add it there. I'm doing two rainbows at the same time. One of them is off screen, what I'm working on now, and then the other one is here. And so I'm just kind of going through and doing the exact same thing each time on each rainbow so that they'll each be exactly the same as the other one. And I'm having a little bit of trouble finding all the colors that I need because I do have a pretty limited selection of Copic markers. I have a lot, I feel like I have a lot, and I certainly have spent a lot of money on them, but I still find that I've got significant gaps in my collection where I really want a certain color, but I just don't have it. I'm not interested in blending colors to make a different color or anything like that. So here, what happened was that first marker that I used on the purple balloon, I don't know what was wrong with it, but there's something wrong with the marker itself. I think it looks like it's running out of ink, which seems impossible because I really haven't used any of my markers all that much. But anyhow, it's running out of ink and it made a terrible blob on the purple balloon in the front, but it's really okay. See how messy it looks? I'm just going to leave it because I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. This balloon is going to be one of several elements on this card, and it really doesn't have to be perfect. I guess if it bothers a person enough, they could go back and restamp and recolor and do all of that, but I just didn't want to. I felt like I was fine with it having an imperfection on it. It's quite a big imperfection, but that's okay. So now I'm just pulling off the dies that come to coordinate with the stamps that I'm using. And I really like how the balloons are kind of all die cut in a bunch, and then you can stamp the strings to go underneath of them. I really like that. That's going to look cool on the card. And I have to do doubles of a few things, including the clouds and the leaping unicorn. I'm deciding to actually not use the standing unicorn. And my platform, although I'm using the magnetic platform, sometimes when you use it with small dies, it pushes them around a little bit on the platform. And so I just had to use some tape there to keep that one in place. And I'm running these all through my Big Shot. And now this little bear, he's so cute. I colored him gray. Or is he a bear or a bunny? He has got floppy ears. I think he might be a bunny, but he's just adorable, whatever he is. He's just cute. And I like how on that stamp set, there's one who's holding their left hand up and one who's holding their right hand up, so that you can orient your card in whatever way you need to. You can just pick the bear that works for you, or the critter that works for you. So now I'm just showing you my die cut pieces. I've got my balloon with its purple imperfection, and I've got all those little critters. And these are again from the Mama Elephant stamp set with coordinating dies. I won those at a crop. What a great prize, eh? And now I have these pieces of watercolor paper. They are cut at 5.25 by 4, so they are, they're smaller than an A2 card. They're basically set to, they're sized to be like a mat on an A2 card. And now I'm going to do some watercoloring with my Distress Oxides. And this is what was inspired by my last scrapbook page. And in that, I used some of these inks, and I'm using here on dry paper. So oftentimes when I want a really soft watercolory look, I will wet the whole paper first and then apply my ink. But here I'm actually smooshing the ink with water onto a dry piece of cardstock. And even though I do want to get this color all over the page, and I'm adding water here and moving it around, I really like the look that dry paper gives you. It's just two different looks. There's not a right or wrong way to do it, but I really like the little edges that you get where the watercolor kind of bumps up against the dry part of the paper, and it leaves this really harsh edge. And I think that makes for a very interesting, fluffy looking background. And where I'm going to have the bear be in the sky with clouds around him, I thought that would make a nice background. Now I'm just trying something different because I felt like that was just I wanted a softer color for my next background. So I used a mist. I used Mr. Huey's Sky is the color, and it's pretty much the same color. So I realized that I could have just used the Distress Oxide. I want something a little bit more blue. So I went into my Distress color swatching book, and well, it's more than just Distress, it's my color swatching book. And I pulled out a Distress ink. Can anybody tell which one that is? I think it's Faded Denim. Yeah, so I'm adding some Faded Denim so that this card has a little bit of blue on it as well. And I'm flicking and I'm smooshing, and there's no rhyme or reason to what I'm doing. I'm just wanting to get some blue present on the card. I do plan to use my Freckled Fawn cloud border dies, and so a lot of this is going to be covered up. Here's a third color of blue that I'm just adding here, adding water, smooshing straight from the block. As you can see, I'm just kind of making a nice blue mess. I'm drying in between my layers. And if I had taped this down as I did it, it wouldn't warp as much as it has, but I don't mind that it's warped. And just adding even more color. And I'm going to make my little mismatched unicorn go on that background. And now I wanted something that was a little bit different, so I'm going to go with pink as the background for this one. And my first application ends up being fairly light, as you can see, once everything smooshes around. I like that. So I think I'll dry it at this point. There we go. I will add some more, but that's a nice starting point. Adding more water. And here I have this brush. It's kind of like a makeup brush, but it's from the art store and it's really poor quality and it leaves little hairs behind every time I use it. I should know better than to use it at this point, but I keep being hopeful and pulling it out. It really needs to go in the garbage and I need to invest in a better fluffy brush because I like using fluffy brushes. This is a different color of Distress Oxide. This is Picked Raspberry, I think. The other one is Worn Lipstick. I want some drips and just some little areas where the color is a little bit more strong. I'm spraying some water and then I'm just pulling it up. I like how that looks for the other unicorn. So the blue unicorn will be on the pink background. And then I just had so much media here on, like so much color here on my mat that I just sopped some of it up on a fourth card. Even though I'm not making a fourth card, I will just have a fourth piece of watercolor here that I can use for whatever. Now I just pulled all that aside and put it on the floor over on another area of my scrap room for now, and I'll clean it up later because I'd love to get working on putting together these cards. So here we go, the 3 pieces that I have. And as you can tell, I don't really know how I'm going to put these together at this point. I'm thinking that I'm going to make them horizontal because most of the cards that I end up making are almost always horizontal. So that's what I thought at first. And then I actually took out some of this footage because it was just getting too long. I ran these dies. These are cloud border dies from Lawn Fawn, and I'm running a whole bunch of them through. So I pre-cut my paper to the size of a card front, so an A2 card, and then I'm just chopping it up with these borders, and you can get multiple surfaces from one card. You can get at least 2, but you can actually also sometimes use the third piece as well, depending on how you orient them. And they do have a stitched border edge on them, so you want to make sure that they all have a stitched edge. My cat was very lonely this day. My kids were away, and she gets very needy when the kids aren't around to pay attention to her. And I'm just trying to vary the sizes and also the size. What I mean is that there's one with large, big, fluffy clouds and one with smaller clouds and then one with very small clouds. And now I'm also going to make a couple of these other clouds. These are just, I forget what they're called. Let me check. They are Simple Puffy Cloud and Simple Puffy Cloud frames. And I've had these in my stash for a while, and as you can tell, I haven't used the frames before. I think I have used the clouds, but not the frames, or the other way around. I can't remember. So I cut a couple of clouds there. And now I'm just going to make some card bases. So this is Stampin' Up! Whisper White heavy cardstock. I'm just cutting it to the size of an A2 card. So that is 5.5 by 4.25. And then I'm scoring it with the scoring part of my Stampin' Up! Trimmer. And I somehow lost my bone folder in the move from one room to the other. It's here somewhere, but I just don't know where it's at. I'm using score tape here because score tape is stronger than the tape runner adhesive that I usually use. And because these pieces of watercolor, these panels of watercolor are warped from all the color on them, all the water, I want them to really sit down to the cardstock base. And this stronger adhesive will help them to lie flat and not peel up and start unsticking from the cardstock base. And so I'm layering up these clouds. This is just American Crafts cardstock. It's that kind of bluish tinge of white. It's not my favorite white cardstock, but I thought for a card like this, it would be a good use for it. And these don't all line up. Like you'll notice that like I have to kind of spread them out in order to get them to layer the way I want them to. And that's just a good way to get the most use out of your cardstock. Like it didn't have to be the full length in order for me to overlap them with each other like this. So they all end at different points instead of all ending at the bottom of the card, which is fine. Added some pop dots in between them to give them really nice dimension. I love that. And now I'm just putting that cloud right there, and then I'll stick the unicorn right down. And then I just wanted to look like give the unicorn a little bit of motion. So I put a little path that looks like he's frolicking through the clouds and jumping over the little tiny rainbow amongst the clouds. You have to really use your imagination here because that rainbow is not quite proportional to the clouds, and nor do rainbows usually appear in the middle of the clouds. I don't think they're usually on Earth, but who knows? Maybe there's something about rainbows that I don't know, and maybe they do occur up in the clouds. So I'm just trimming down the sentiment. What I should have done is stamp the sentiment on the bottom corner of that lower cloud right there before I put the pop dots on, but I didn't. So I'm just using a little. This really doesn't look all that great when you look at it closely because you can see that there's a little extra piece of paper there that holds my title. But I just thought I didn't want to pull the card apart, and it's the kind of thing that I notice, but probably the person who gets the card is not really going to notice that that was a mistake. I'm trying to just kind of get these cards done and not be too hard on myself about making them be perfect. And I think that's what you should do when you make your cards too. So there we go. Oh, I'm going overboard on the pop dots there. These are Stampin' Up! Pop dots. I like them. They're cute little hexagon shape, and I like the quality of them. They're very sticky. And so I will just layer those clouds onto my second background, again with the score tape, just to make sure that this stays down and flattens out over time. And they are quite flattened out at this point. I've had them kicking around my room for about a week now. And basically same design. My poor little mismatched ragamuffin unicorn. She's cute. I thought about putting the sentiment someplace else, but I really like it down here in the corner. I wish I had stamped it on that paper. I would have had to have used the smooth side of the paper instead of the textured side in order for it to stamp nicely. But anyhow, they look nice, especially from afar. I'll put another loop-de-loop path for my unicorn to give it a little bit more dynamic energy. And I'm just taking my Wink of Stella and I'm adding a glittery edge to the edges of that cardstock. You can really barely see it. Like, this has been dry for a week now and I can barely see the glitter. So I don't know if that was worth it or not. So I'm just layering the frame with the cloud. I used my Zig two-way glue pen for that. And now I am going to have to stamp the strings for the balloons. I first before I do that, I have to decide where the cloud is going to be and where the bear is going to be on the cloud. So that looks about right. So I will ink that up. I'm just using VersaFine. And that looks great. And here I'm going to benefit from my mistake that I learned from the last one and actually stamp this out while I still have the card without any pop dots or anything. This layer isn't going to get any pop dots anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So this card is coming together, and I really like this background. This is probably my favorite background in terms of, like, it really does look like clouds. It's quite nice. And so now I have to add a little bit of the strings to the bear's paw as well, so that I know it's probably a bunny, but sorry, I keep calling it a bear. It's a bear in my mind. So there we go. I just have to figure these out in such a way that the cloud is going to sit nicely, and then the bear can sit nicely on the cloud and be holding on to the balloons. So half of the bear will be attached with regular adhesive, and then the other half, like just the top of his head where it falls over onto the sky, will have some pop dots behind it to hold it up. Again with the score tape to make this really strong. And I'm just folding under any extra. Some of those pieces were a little bit too long, so I just fold them under so they don't hang over. And there we go. Now these 3 cards look really cute just as they are, but I felt like they needed a little something. I felt like the clouds especially needed a little something because, oh, and also that frame is just not staying put. So I'm going to take my Tombow Aqua adhesive, which is my favorite adhesive for gluing paper to other paper, and just took a tiny little bead of that and put it around the edges so that the frame will stay put. And now I have this beautiful tray filled with these awesome sequins. It's called Little Things from Lucy's Cards, and the set that I'm digging into right now is called Crystal. You can get these at www.lucys-shop.com, and I will warn you, they are not cheap. But they're really, really special. And so I have as you can see, I went a little overboard. I couldn't choose which one, so I bought all my favorites and I pulled them out as a special treat to add to certain cards. These sequins are really beautiful. They're really good quality, and it's a nice mixture of different sizes of sequins and little stars and little dots and cute, adorable little things. They are quite expensive, but if you think about it as an investment, you will, if you use them in this way, like very sparingly, you will get a lot of cards out of these sequins. So I'm sorry if I've just enabled anybody to, spend their kids' entire college tuition on sequins, because it will feel like it when you press that buy button. But they are really cute. I wouldn't use these for shaker cards, although that is what I bought them for. I just think that you would use way too many of them too quickly. And so I would buy sequins in bulk to use for shaker cards. In fact, that's what I did. Was after I bought these, I went to eBay and I bought a bunch of single. You have to buy, if you buy them in bulk, you have to buy like all one size, all one shape at once. And so I just bought an assortment so that I could make some shaker cards without having to use these very expensive sequins. If anything, if I hoard anything, it's these sequins. You're all going over there now just out of curiosity to see how expensive they actually are. I can't remember. It was too long ago. Please don't tell me. I don't want to know if you do go over and check them out. There's the website. I just put a freeze frame in there for you. So here are the cards. I'll show them to you up close because I didn't get a chance to take really nice photos of them. But I think they look great. I like the sequins added to the clouds. It just takes the otherwise plainish clouds, especially where the clouds take up so much real estate on the card. It's nice to make them look a little bit more interesting. And I did overlap some of those sequins so that there's sequins inside of sequins, and it adds a nice little bit of interest. Thanks so much for watching. Check out my channel if you're interested in seeing any scrapbooking process videos or other videos from me, and have a really great scrappy week.